Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Nobot Studios. I am back again with another Grit Fantasy RPG video. Thanks for joining in. Today I'll be talking about loot. Now, who doesn't love getting a bunch of cool stuff on their adventures? The characters are out there risking their lives doing all these crazy things. Having a few interesting items that they can use in clutch moments can just make the difference in any session or campaign that you're running. And with Grit not having a set advancement system, meaning that there's no levels really, items can truly act as a way to level up characters in your games. So those GMs out there, using loot items can be a great way to kind of up the power level a little bit for characters in a continuing story, whether that's episode based or in like a short campaign arc or long term. Introducing items kind of on a regular basis can really make a difference in your games, and just can really add some interesting dynamics to how things kind of play out. It's always fun to see how players use items, especially ones that have just some interesting, unique qualities to them. It's always a treat to me to see that. Another thing to think about with loot in Grit Fantasy RPG is that there are no classes for characters. You have, of course, lineage abilities that kind of denote some differences, but there's no set class. Like there's no fighter, there's no paladin, there's no thief, blah blah blah, all that stuff that D&D has. But loot itself could be used to kind of create a character type if you wanted to. So I did this on purpose. I get the unique items that are kind of just the standard setup for starting characters has a nice range of things, a nice range of choices, so that you could play any kind of character type you'd like. But the nice thing is, you don't have to. So I like the idea that it's not it's not class driven, but if you wanted to kind of play a certain type, you have that option. So I like the idea of just being able to be free to explore and not to be pigeonholed in a certain way of playing as a character. But if you like that kind of thing, you can absolutely do that in Grit. And the GM can be mindful of that too. Like they can set out to do that and maybe even give new characters certain types of loot to make them more, class based, if you will. So it's always an option. As far as the GM's concerned, it's probably something you want to be mindful of, and letting items be discovered or awarding items on a regular basis. Like one shots, I would say it may not happen a lot. And if you do that, it might be best to introduce it in the beginning, before the session, or like during the session with things that are like single use kind of things that are going to give them advantages or, interesting opportunities, that may not be super overpowered, but may give them like, kind of something that will help them along in their session. Of course, with more campaign-based games or episode-based games where you have returning characters, having loot as kind of a part of your campaign structure is pretty important, I think. You don't want to overdo it, but it's good to have that in there just to give the players a little treat here and there. And I'm going to talk about like kind of the different types of loot, but the more powerful ones you're going to want to keep be a little bit more reserved in how you dish those out, but there's plenty of other like lower powered items that can happen more regularly, that can just give your characters a little bit of edge and just have a little bit more fun with it. Okay. So I've got the rulebook once again pulled up on the left-hand side here. I'm going to just go real quick into the character build section. And this is the unique items. Okay, so there's 20 of these. There's a D20 die that you can actually roll these as part of the quick build option. But you can select them. So there's 20 items, and these are basically artifacts, which are the more powerful items in the game. Okay. Unique items are unique only to the character creation section. And like I said, there's a range of items in here to give all kinds of character type options for the characters. And a lot of them are they're a lot of fun. So after that, you get one of these items as a new character, and then you get a choice of 4 items from the basic gear lists. So you got 2 lists, 2 D20 tables. First one is armor and weapons. Second one is items and kits. These are basic items, but some of them have some interesting abilities. The armor and weapons are, pretty basic, but some of the items and kits have some really cool things in them, like smoke bombs, stink bombs, tasty biscuits, disguise kit. There's some things in here that will be real fun to use for players. So anyway, these I just wanted to show you get kind of a choice of 4 items on any of these lists. As the GM, you could actually use basic gear as a way, just give out basic gear as loot items if you want to kind of keep them a little lower powered, right? So something like a goblin would carry, you could maybe roll an item on items and kits, and they're just carrying one of these things if a character decides to take it from them or defeat them somehow and get this item. So it's not going to be overpowered, right? Another thing, what I like to do when I have episode-based games is, this wouldn't be for new characters, but for returning characters, sometimes I like to, kind of an implied thing, like they've been in town for a while and they have some money to spend. There's no coin in Grit, which is another topic I'll be covering sometime soon. But what I'll do is I'll give returning characters an option to choose one basic item from either of these 2 lists and just put it on their character sheet. Like, there's no money involved, there's no haggling. It's just assumed that they get one of these items. And it's just a fun way to add that in without a lot of time taken. There's no haggling or going down to the shop and spending time on that, because if you're running episode-based games or short campaigns and stuff, I don't know if you're like me, I have limited time. I have like a 2-hour block, and that is all I have. I don't want to spend that on shopping and stuff. So sometimes I'll even just roll a few out and have them ready and just like hand them out. All right. But giving players a choice is also fun too. One quick thing too, I just want to go over the glossary real quick here. Like, I've gone over this in other items or other videos, but there's each item has basically a set aspect. So if you have to make a roll, there's the aspect is shown. If it's a single-use item, it has a SU in brackets. And then there's all kinds of, it'll show ranges. So like a bow will have long range, or throwing knives will have short range. There's also melee range as well. So, any of the axes, swords, and that kind of stuff would be melee range. There's only a couple things that require might. And that just means that you need to be strong enough to carry it or use it or wield it or wear it, whatever it is. And then there's soak, of course, and that's how much damage reduction like a shield or suit of armor does. And then thrown is just a thrown type weapon that will go short range. So anyway, that's just a brief run through of that. And then I'm going to go straight to the loot section here. And I have gone through this before in a previous video, but I did want to kind of like look at this in a different way. So there are 20 D20 tables. 8 of those are kind of like lower powered items. So that's the gear and the consumables up on top of the top 2 tables that you see. And then there's the artifacts. That's a D12 table, or D12 number of tables. All of these are D20, of course. I just mentioned that. But so if you wanted to roll on any one of these specific areas or types, it'd be D4 for gear, D4 for consumables, and D12 for artifacts. So the way I look at this when I'm running or setting up or prepping games is I have gear and consumables as kind of the low end of things, and then the artifacts as like the higher powered stuff. Okay. Now gear, the armor and weapons and items and kits, like the first 2 lines there, those are identical to what's in the character creation section. Okay, and the reason I did that is I wanted to put everything in the same place for GMs. So if you're looking for any kind of loot item that's not a unique item, it's going to be in the loot section. Okay, so those are just a repeat of what's in the character section. The uncommon items are just a kind of an upgrade to armor and weapons. And if I just kind of scroll here a little bit, what you're going to find with these is that there are some items that are specifically designed for certain lineages. Like if I look at number 4 here, the Bullock armor, that is specifically designed for Bullocks. However, anybody could wear it. The thing is that what this does, because Bullocks can't wear armor with a prowess penalty, this allows them to wear armor with a prowess penalty. It gives them a soak 1. So it's just a cool little touches like that. Like there's the Ruck Wars helm made just for the Ruck War. So Ruck Wars can't wear armor, so this gives them another armor point. So just kind of a neat little thing, a little bit of a extra boost to some lineage stuff. And the rest of it is just like basic gear, just a little bit more ramped up. Okay. Now, unusual objects I've talked about before. Those are just really narrative objects or items. They don't have a mechanical set of rules set up for them. It's more just narrative and open to interpretation. So for GMs out there that are looking at these unusual objects, I would probably limit the use of these, or the amount of times you put these out, because I think they drive story really well, but I think if you overdo it, it can be just too much. So I'd be mindful of that if putting those in. They are great. They are one of my favorite parts of this whole loot section, actually. And in the future, I'd like to do more of that kind of stuff. So, but they're really cool. Just keep them limited. And then the consumable items are all mostly single-use items. Some of them have multiples of the same thing. So there'd be like a potion with 2 potions or 2 pieces of food, 2 types of food items, as it, taking up 1 gear slot basically. So all of these are going to have special abilities that are not overpowered. but give the characters some really cool things they can do, like flying for a certain amount of time, or becoming like a cloud-like entity for a short time, or breathing underwater, or healing, or gaining a focus die back, that kind of stuff. So these are really great, and I would highly recommend using these, just sprinkling those into your games, as something that characters can discover. So they're great. I love them. And then, of course, artifacts. Those are the big ones. They're going to be far more powerful than anything else in the loot tables. These are you're gonna definitely want to go sparingly on. I would probably not do but maybe one or maybe two in a session. Of course, you have to feel for your pace and what you're doing with your games. There's all kinds of variables, but I would not overdo this, because if you add too many of these too quickly, you're going to be way powering them up super fast. So just one of these items can make a huge difference. So just be mindful of that. Another thing I wanted to add, that to put this in your ear for you GMs, if you find that the unique item list is getting a little old, like this will take a long time. In all the time that I tested the game, the unique item list didn't get old because the combination between lineages and those items. However, if you did want to mix it up, or if you felt like, you just want to refresh it a little bit, you can use artifacts to replace it with artifacts. So a couple things you could do there. First is you could just randomly generate 20 items from all the artifacts and just make a completely new random list that characters can choose from. The other option would be to selectively choose the items as you see fit, depending on your world or the story that you're working on. Maybe some items are not available. Maybe there's more items available than others. Depends on the feel that you're going for. I think I would like, personally, at least one of each of the types. So one armor, one book, one clothing item, one crystal, that kind of thing. So, and then maybe a mix of the other stuff, just so that you have a good range of item types. Because the way these are kind of divided, like armor and shields are more passive, books and scrolls are command based or insight based, clothing is more passive, crystals and runes are command based. You get into melee weapons that are might based and ranged weapons that are prowess based. So to have a good mix there is probably the most appropriate way to kind of set that up. Another way you could do that is you could have the players either first choose a category. So let's say a character is I want to start with an armor or shield. So just have them roll on the D20, roll a D20 for one of those armor and shield items, and that's what their unique item is. Another option would be to have them roll twice and then pick one of those, and the other one gets discarded. Okay. I have done stuff like that, and it is fun. So, yeah, keep that in mind as an option. It's an optional rule. Just putting it out there. Another thing to think about too, you GMs, is that monsters do not have set items attached to them. So, I'm thinking old school games out there, like the old basic D&D or AD&D, they had treasure types and stuff. Only certain items were included with certain monsters. That is not so in Grit Fantasy RPG. You just have free reign to give them any kind of items that you want, if they even have them. So yeah, you're free to kind of pick and choose what you want to do with that. You're not set with any certain way of allocating items to the monsters. Okay, so keep that in mind. Another, I think, kind of last thing I want to mention, and if you've watched my videos before or you know me from gaming, I'm all about like trying to make prep as minimal as possible and make life easy, the most easy for the GM. Okay, so one thing that I do to save time for in gameplay, actually, and to kind of make my prep easier, is to set up some mini loot tables. And what I like to do is I like to do a D6 table. So I will generate 6 random items that I can generate with a D6 die in gameplay, and I have it like up and ready to go. And when I play VTT games, I have this as a handout that I kind of set up in Roll20. So if at any point there's a chance that loot gets, put out there, I can pull down this list. It's only 6 items. I can randomly roll or just pick something, and boom, I've got it, and I can copy paste and put it right in a character sheet. It's like super fast. There's no going to the PDF, scrolling down, rolling D20s, figuring stuff out, reading things. Like, no, you have it like already set up. Now, if you want to take that a little bit further, and this is what I really like to do, I make 2 tables. I make one that's lower powered, that's going to include gear and consumables, and another one that includes artifacts only. And I have that kind of set up here. Okay, so this is an example. So I've got these 2 D6 tables. I've got the top one is like the lower powered stuff, right? This is taken from gear and consumables. I don't have everything written out in this example, but this is just to show you. In Roll20, I would have copy and pasted it from the PDF and just put it, in those lines, so you have the full description of each thing that you could just drop into the character sheet. Yeah, so the top one is just like lower powered stuff. And then the bottom one is 6 items that are from the artifacts table. So those are all like higher powered stuff. Okay, so now you have 2 options of things to choose from. Depending on the situation, you are going to be covered. You don't have to look in the book or the PDF. You are good to go. Another great thing about this is that when you take these items from the list, you just like erase what was used, and for the next session, if you're doing episode-based games or campaign, you can just generate a random item for the ones that were taken, so that you don't have to generate 6 every time. It's just the 1 or 2 or whatever that you used. So it streamlines things for you, makes it easier, and you always have this list going and ready to go. Yeah, it's very helpful. I have found that it works very well for me. So I wanted to show you that. And that pretty much summarizes kind of everything I wanted to say about loot. I didn't want to get into like specific details about every single loot item. There's just too much there, and I want to keep things a little bit mysterious for those folks who haven't purchased the game or played it yet. There's just so much stuff in there, and a lot of it's a lot of fun. So if you made it this far and you haven't looked into Grit Fantasy RPG, I've got it on DriveThruRPG. I also have it on itch.io now in PDF form, along with some tokens that go along with it. So keep that in mind. You can get the printed books through DriveThru, but the PDF is also available on itch. So, and also I'm on Ko-fi now. So if you want to throw a couple bucks to the donation of the Nobot Studios Fund, that will be much appreciated. Of course, no obligation to do so. And I also have a Discord server for Grit Fantasy or Grit RPG, because there'll be more variations of Grit coming out. So please join in the conversations there, and there's a great community growing. We would love to have you there. So anywho, that is all I have to say today about loot. Just wrapping this up. Hope you're all out there gaming and staying warm if it's cold where you're at, and appreciate you listening to this and checking things out. And hey, keep rolling those dice.